The woman sat alone at the kitchen table. Outside, the rain fell in soft, steady threads. She had no one to call, no friend waiting for an answer, no family member expecting her arrival. The phone sat on the counter, dark and silent. She looked at it for a long time. Then she looked away. There is a kind of silence that arrives when everyone has left. Not the angry silence of a slammed door, not the impatient silence of a crowded room, but the deep, soft silence of an empty house. This was her silence now. She folded her hands on the table. Her fingers were cold. The coffee in her cup had gone cold too. She did not move to warm it. Instead, she sat very still. And in that stillness, she remembered something. Something she had learned when she was very small. God sees the sparrow fall. God counts the hairs on your head. She whispered into the quiet kitchen. Hello. She was not sure if she was speaking to the rain, or to the empty chair across from her, or to the one she had not spoken to in years. But she said it again. Hello. No voice answered from the ceiling. No light filled the room. But something shifted. It was small. So small she almost missed it. A loosening in her chest. A warmth behind her ribs. Like a door, long rusted shut, beginning to creak open. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in 347 days, she did not feel completely alone. She began to remember the story of Hagar. Not the version she had heard in Sunday school. The real version. The painful one. Hagar was a woman with no one. She had been given away. She had been used. She had been sent into the desert with a child on her hip and a skin of water on her shoulder. The water ran out. The child grew weak, and Hagar sat down in the sand. She could not bear to watch her son die, so she moved a bow shot away. She lifted her voice and wept. The woman at the kitchen table understood this cry. She had wept that same cry into her pillow, into the shower water, into the silence of her car at stoplights. No one heard. No one came. But Hagar. God heard Hagar. The story says that God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well of water. The well had been there the whole time. She just could not see it. Not until she stopped trying to be strong. Not until she stopped pretending she was fine. Not until she wept so loudly that heaven itself leaned down. The woman opened her eyes. She looked around her kitchen. The dishes were still in the sink. The mail was still piled on the counter. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had changed. Because she was no longer looking for a human hand. She was looking for a well. She decided to try something. It felt foolish at first. She stood up from the table and walked to the window. The rain was slowing now. Drops hung on the glass like tiny lanterns. She pressed her palm against the cold pane, and she turned her heart. Turning the heart is not the same as praying. Praying asks for things. Praying explains things. Turning the heart simply faces God, like a flower turning toward the sun. Not because the sun has spoken, but because the sun is there. She whispered again, I have no one. The words hung in the air. She expected them to feel heavy, but they felt light, because she said them to someone, not to the wall, not to herself, to God. I have no one but you. She waited. The silence did not feel empty anymore. It felt full. full of something she could not name, full of a presence that asked nothing from her, that demanded nothing, that simply stayed. She realized something important. God had not left her. She had left God. Not in anger, not in rebellion, but in the slow, sad drift of disappointment. She had stopped believing that anyone listened, so she had stopped speaking. But God had not stopped listening. God had been listening to her silence, waiting for her to turn.
That night, she could not sleep. The bed felt too wide. The room felt too dark. Old memories came creeping in like fog. Mistakes she had made. Words she wished she could take back. People who had walked away. She lay on her back and stared at the ceiling. A voice whispered in her mind, "You are too broken to be loved. You are too much. You are not enough." She had heard these voices for so long. She had believed them for so long. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, she had turned her heart. And turning the heart gives you a small, strange courage. She sat up in bed. She pulled her knees to her chest. And she spoke out loud to the dark room. "God, I don't feel you." She waited. "I don't see you." She waited longer. "But I am talking to you anyway." This is the hardest prayer. The prayer without feelings. The prayer without fireworks. The prayer that feels like throwing words into a well and hearing no splash. But the woman kept going. "Please, help me sleep. Please, help me trust. Please, help me believe that you are here." She lay back down. The voices did not leave, but they grew quieter, like dogs that had lost their scent. She closed her eyes, and somewhere between wakefulness and sleep, she felt a warmth settle over her shoulders, like a blanket, like a hand, like a promise. She slept. She woke to sunlight, golden and soft, pouring through the curtains like honey. She lay still for a moment, listening. Birds were singing outside her window. They had been singing every morning, but she had not heard them. She had been too deep in her own sadness. She sat up slowly. The warmth from the night before was gone, but something else had taken its place. A quiet certainty. She did not feel happy. Happy was too strong a word. She felt held. She walked to the kitchen. She made coffee. She toasted a piece of bread. And as she spread the butter, she spoke again. "Thank you. Not for fixing anything. Not for sending help. Just thank you. For the bread. For the sunlight. For the birds. For the breath in her lungs." She ate slowly, chewing each bite with attention. The bread was ordinary, store-bought, slightly dry, but it tasted like manna, like food from heaven, because she was eating it with gratitude. And gratitude changes everything. She washed her dishes. She put them away, and she made a decision. She would not wait for her feelings to change. She would not wait for a sign. She would not wait for someone to call. She would simply turn her heart every morning, every night, and see what God would do. She gave herself 40 days, not as a religious rule, but as a gentle experiment. 40 days of turning her heart toward God, even when she did not feel like it, even when the silence felt heavy, even when the loneliness came back. Day 1 was easy. The newness carried her. Day 3 was harder. The loneliness returned like a tide. She sat on her couch and cried for an hour. Then she whispered, "I am still here, God." Day 7 brought a small miracle. She was washing her face when a thought floated into her mind. Not her own voice, something softer. "You are not forgotten." She froze. Tears ran down her cheeks mixed with soap. No one had said those words to her in years. "You are not forgotten." Day 12 was terrible. She woke up angry. Angry at everyone who had left. Angry at God for letting her be so alone. She yelled into her empty apartment. "Where are you?" The silence answered, but it was not cold. It was patient, like a father letting a child finish her tantrum. Day 12 ended with a whisper. "I'm sorry." And the strangest thing happened. She felt closer to God on day 12 than on day 1. Because honesty brings intimacy. Even angry honesty. On day 23, something shifted. She was sitting in her usual chair. The Bible lay open on her lap. She was not reading it. She was just sitting with it, like sitting with an old friend who does not need words. A knock came at the door. Her heart jumped. She was not expecting anyone. She almost did not answer. But something nudged her. Go. She opened the door. An elderly woman stood there, holding a small pot of yellow flowers. "You don't know me," the woman said. "I live 2 floors down. I was making extra soup last night, and I couldn't sleep, and your name kept coming into my mind. So I brought you soup and flowers. I hope that's not strange." The woman in the doorway began to cry. Not sad tears. Something else. Something like a dam breaking. The elderly woman did not ask questions. She simply stepped inside. She put the flowers on the table. She set the soup on the stove. And she sat down in the empty chair. The chair across from the woman who had no one. "My husband died 3 years ago," the elderly woman said. "I thought I was alone forever. But God sends the lonely to the lonely, because only the lonely understand." They drank tea together. 2 women, 2 stories, 1 God. The woman learned something new. Faith is not certainty. Faith is leaning. Like a tree that has grown on a hillside, its roots hold the slope, but its trunk leans toward the sun. She was learning to lean. When the anxiety came, she leaned into God. When the old voices whispered, she leaned harder. When the silence stretched long and thin, she leaned anyway. Leaning is not seeing. Leaning is not feeling. Leaning is a choice. A small, daily choice. She began to write in a notebook. Not a prayer journal. Something simpler. Each night she wrote 1 sentence. Today, God was with me when I walked to the store. Today, God was with me when I cried in the parking lot. Today, God was with me when I laughed at a cat video. The sentences were small, ridiculously small, but they changed her, because she was practicing attention. She was looking for God in the ordinary places, and she was finding him there, in the steam of her coffee, in the kindness of a stranger, in the unexpected yellow flowers. On night 37, she had a dream. She was standing in a vast, empty field. The sky was gray. The ground was dry. She was completely alone. She walked for a long time. No destination, no direction, just walking. Then She saw a figure in the distance, sitting on a rock. She walked closer. The figure was an old man. His hands were scarred. His eyes were kind. She knew who it was. But she did not kneel. She did not speak. She simply sat down at his feet, and he placed his hand on her head. No words, just weight, just warmth, just presence. She woke up crying, but the tears were not from sadness. They were from relief. She had not imagined it. She had not made it up. God was real, and God was with her, even when no one else was. 40 days passed. The woman sat at her kitchen table again. The rain was falling again, too. But everything was different. The phone was still dark. The chair across from her was still empty. The coffee in her cup still grew cold. But she was not alone. She had not been alone for 40 days. She had simply been learning to see the one who was always there. She folded her hands. Not in desperation this time. In peace. God, she whispered, I have no one but you. And I have finally realized you are enough. You have always been enough. I just wasn't looking at you. The rain softened. The room grew warm. And somewhere deep in her chest, a flower began to bloom. Not a loud flower, not a dramatic flower, a quiet one, a hardy one, a flower that had learned to grow in the shade of loneliness because it had turned toward the true sun. She smiled, a small smile, the first real smile in a very long time. And she whispered one last thing. Thank you for being the one who stays. The silence answered. But this time, the silence was not empty. It was full of God.